Well, I'm gonna take a drink first. I'm gonna purposely sip very obnoxiously. That's gonna be my new thing. Hey guys, welcome to the long-awaited episode 9 of the podcast, which you are currently listening to. It's called the Soulscast, and it's all about the Soul series. So if you find yourself here, you must like the Soul series enough to listen to one idiot talk about him for a little while at least. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Um, tonight. You know, it's gonna be a little strange because I'm using zero notes. I did zero prep work for this episode. It's something that the topic is something I think I can talk about pretty easily without having to reference anything. I'm gonna keep the wiki open because I usually do when I record these anyway. So I'll keep the wiki open, but otherwise I'm just totally going off the top of my head. Stream of conscious, I think they call it. I kind of did that with my Demon Souls episode a few weeks ago. More than a few weeks ago. I think that was episode 2. And this is now episode 9, so that was, 7 weeks ago? Boy, that's a long time. That's pretty cool. I've been doing this for 2 months. And yeah, if you're listening right now, I'm recording this Monday night. I would love to have this done and released by Tuesday night or Wednesday at the latest. I just released episode 8 early this morning at 1 a.m. because last week I was very busy and I recorded it last week on St. Patrick's Day on that last Thursday, but I never got a chance to edit it and then get the video ready, and my wife didn't have a chance to help me with that either, to get the video all ready to publish. So we just finished it last night, slash early this morning. So episode 8, from which was technically last week's, was just released. It's all about the Dark Souls enemies. I call it the bestiary. During the regular Soulscast, Adam and I did 2 bestiary episodes on Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne enemies. And I wanted to do Dark Souls, and eventually I'll do a Demon Souls one as well. But I figured I might as well, because I'm, slowly playing through Dark Souls, and I was under the impression that Dark Souls 3 was out very soon, so I wanted to do a pre-Dark Souls 3 episode. But since it's not coming out soon, except in Japan, I'm going to push that back, obviously. So I had to scramble to find something. And this week I kind of had to scramble as well. I was looking through my list of topics that I have to do, and none of them were really catching my interest too much. This is going to sound lazy, but I didn't feel like doing a lot of prep work and a lot of research for this episode. And some of the topics I have to do have a decent amount of prep and research that I need to do with them, which are best left for other days. So I decided, okay, today we're doing bosses. I'm going to talk about the bosses in Dark Souls. And I know having an enemies and then a bosses episode back to back from the same game, it's very similar content, but maybe it works because, like I said, I am still playing through Dark Souls for the first time in a couple years. So the game's not new to me because I know it pretty well. But it's fun to play through it because I haven't in a long time. The only Souls I've played recently was Bloodborne last year, which I played quite a bit. And then the Scholar of the First Sin, Dark Souls 2, which I played a pretty good amount of last year. So the earlier part of the series, Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1, I haven't played in a very, very long time. So I did enemies for Dark Souls last week. This week I want to talk about bosses. It's going to be very freeform. I have zero notes. I don't even have my notes thing open like I usually do. So hopefully I don't forget to do anything like plug myself or talk about what I'm playing. But I won't forget that kind of stuff. In fact, let's go into it right now. My name is Shane. You probably know that. And if you don't know it, then howdy. That's my name. And I'm on social media. You can find me on Instagram. Search for Kalameet, Kalameet. That's a boss. Perhaps I'll talk about him today. Keep listening to find out. That's my Instagram name. My Twitter name is the same. Replace the L with a 1, so Ka1A. MEET, and my YouTube channel, which you're most likely listening to this on. It's Shane Norton. Lousy name. I'm gonna see if I can change it or make a new, like a totally new channel or something. But that YouTube, if you search Shane Norton and look for the profile with a picture of a beer bottle and like 200 videos, because as I've said multiple times in the past, there are more than one Shane Norton on YouTube, but none of them have more than like a dozen videos, and they're all, I think the profile pictures are all like people. Mine's a beer bottle, so just look for the beer bottle. Just like most things in life, look for the beer bottle. Well, that didn't fully make sense, but that's fine. And my YouTube channel is 99% boss battles. The only thing that isn't boss battles are basically these podcasts that I upload. I love boss battles, which ties perfectly into what I want to talk about today. But I post boss battles for the games that I'm playing. I've had this idea for a very, very long time, before I knew about YouTube, that I wanted to like collect information for boss battles and like maybe run a website, like a boss battle database website where you could just look up information for every single boss battle in every game from the NES up until whatever is the most recent PS4, Xbox One. That would take hundreds of thousands of hours and manpower that I just don't have, and I don't have access to every single game ever made. But with the YouTube page, it's just documenting, just in real time, just fights that I do with bosses in any game I'm playing. So I have, like I said, about 200 videos. Probably like 180 of those are boss battles. I have a few other things that aren't actually boss battles from like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 2, but I have boss battles from those two games. I'm uploading them from Dark Souls. I'm uploading them from Illusion of Gaia. Any game I play, I actually have a capture device now. I used to just do it with the PS4 because that was very easy. I have a capture device now, so I can record anything I play and then upload it to YouTube, which is a great thing. So that's what it is. If you like boss battles like I do, check it out. It's growing every day. I post as much as I can. I actually haven't posted in a while because I don't have anything. Well, that's not true. I have probably 50 videos for the Binding of Isaac Rebirth, but I'm trying to group them up into separate videos because each boss battle in that game only takes like 30 seconds, and I don't want to release 30-second videos. So I'm trying to group a bunch together that go with each other, and I just don't have all the bosses for each individual grouping that I'd like yet. It's very frustrating, so I'm like one boss away from each area. But that's fine. I'm just rambling at this point. What games have I been playing lately? Because I like to talk about the games I've been playing. I have been playing through Dark Souls. It's been slow going. I mentioned last week, or 2 days ago, if you listen to this when they come out, I'm having a fairly difficult time with Dark Souls, and I'm kind of surprised by that because obviously it's a game that I love, and it's a game that I've played and beat several times, and I have still been playing Souls, here and there, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls, having a tough time. Moonlight Butterfly took me a very, very long time to beat, way longer than I should have, and in general I've just been having a tough time getting through areas. Part of it, I think, is I've been a little underleveled, so that might be something. Last time I played, which was actually probably last week, I upgraded my sword. I'm using a bastard sword, two-handed. I upgraded it from a +1 to like a +4, so I think that extra damage output should help quite a bit. So I'm playing that. I'm playing the aforementioned Illusion of Gaia, which is a Super Nintendo game. My favorite Super Nintendo game, and also, coincidentally, the only Super Nintendo game that I currently own. Long story with that. Well, it's not a long story. I don't feel like telling it right now. I'm also playing, as I also mentioned, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and I am so obsessed it's not even funny. If I could just play that game for 9 straight hours, I would. As we're speaking, as I'm talking into this microphone, I am downloading Portal 2 on my PS3, which is a game that my wife and I bought. I think on the midnight release. Hey,
Hi.
hi, special guest.
Hi.
Did we get Portal 2 at the midnight release in Manchester? I think, right?
Nashua.
It was Nashua.
Mm-hmm.
But we got it midnight release.
Maybe. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was like 2010 or 11. We were probably first dating.
If we were just dating, then it was Nashua.
I seem to remember that. I don't think I ever got any games in Nashua at midnight release. I remember that GameStop in Manchester on South Willow Street. Well, whatever. That was a little bit of a special guest there. If you listened a couple weeks ago, you know who that is. I don't need to talk about it right now. I'm just kidding. That's my wife. My wife and I played through it when it came out. I might have got it at the midnight release. Portal 2. Amazing game. I played through the solo campaign. My wife and I played through it together. The multiplayer campaign. I sold it a long time ago. Maybe to get a little money for our wedding. That might have been why I sold it. And we've been really itching to play it again for a long time. And finally we decided we're just going to download it from the PlayStation Network. It was $20, which is okay because even used at GameStop, I think it's still like 22 or 23 or something. So, and now I'm just waiting for it to download. Once it downloads tonight, we will play it. And I think that's it. Yeah. So that's where you can find me on social media. That's what I've been playing recently. Now that I've taken up 12 and a half minutes so far, let's talk about what I want to talk about in this episode, and that is...
Sex.
You can put your headphones back in now.
Oh, sorry.
Jeez. My wife being a rabble-rouser like she usually is. No, Dark Souls bosses. Train of thought completely derailed. Okay, Dark Souls bosses. I don't have any specific structure to this. I'm just going to I'm going to talk about ones that I like and ones that I don't like. And just kind of give a general feeling of the bosses in the game. And that's how I'm going to start, with just a general overview. There's a lot of bosses. Not an overwhelming amount. I know Dark Souls 2, a lot of people complain that there was just way too many bosses. And I don't know, I can't agree. I like boss battles so much that I don't know if there's too many boss battles in the game. Now, some of Dark Souls 2 bosses weren't the greatest, but I still appreciate a nice boss battle. So, I don't know. Dark Souls, I'm looking at the wiki, and if we count the DLC, which I do want to count, it looks like there are 27 bosses. I know there's 4 in the DLC. So that would leave, what, 23 bosses in the main game? That sounds about right. And a lot of... Actually, sorry. There's one that's like in a boss that never made it to the game. So I guess that's 22 bosses. So like 22 bosses. Give or take 1 or 2 if I can't do math. Which I can't. That's a pretty good amount. There are some games that have way fewer bosses. I remember Silent Hill Downpour, which I thought was a fabulous game. A lot of people love to shit on the newer Silent Hill games, but Downpour I think is amazing. It's a great game. That game had, I think, 2 boss battles. And they were pretty decent, but 2 boss battles for a game that I played for, I don't know, 15 hours? That's no good. So, Dark Souls is a bunch. I like a very large majority of them. Some are stinkers. Some are middling. And there's some that are just astounding, and you won't ever forget them. And they're part of, like, general video game consciousness and culture now because they're so big. And if you know Dark Souls, you probably know the ones I'm talking about. But we'll get to them in a minute. I like how it starts off with when you're in the Undead Asylum. And the first, like, 2 minutes of the game, once you get out of your cell, you run into that big giant room, and the Asylum demon's in there. And you have, like, the broken sword, whatever the hell it's called, that does, like, 2 damage. And if it's the first time you're playing, you run into this room, a gigantic monster falls down, and it's you gotta fight them, and you probably thinking like, oh, I do 2 damage, this is gonna be great. And if you try to fight him, especially if it's your first time, chances are he's gonna kill you. He's possible to kill there. I've certainly killed him on New Game Plus there because you have all your weapons from the previous game, so he's super easy. I thought about trying to kill him on my most recent playthrough because he's really an easy boss, but I just didn't have the patience. You do 2 damage, and he must have, I don't know, hundreds of HP, so again, do the math yourself. I'm not doing the math. But I like that they start with him, and I think it's partly to like scare brand new players into like thinking like this game is way too intense. But obviously you can just run past them, go through the rest of the Undead Asylum, get your actual weapon, and then when you fight him again, he takes like 5 hits and he's dead. He's very, very, very easy. You can go back and fight a different one, a different demon that looks exactly the same as him in the Undead Asylum called the Stray Demon, and he's also easy. He might have 1 or 2 different attacks, but he looks the same and he's basically the same enemy, or the same boss. But I like that start. Each area of the game, each area basically gives you a boss. So you don't go too long without fighting bosses. Like you go to the Undead Asylum, kill Asylum Demon, and then you go to the Undead Burg, is usually the next place to go. And then you fight Taurus Demon there, and then you can go a little farther and fight the Capra Demon. And basically every big area you go to has a boss. Ash Lake doesn't because it's not a big area. Most areas do, and it's nice because well, they can surprise you. Actually, that's not what I want to say either. I don't know what I want to say. The bosses are nicely spaced apart, so it's not like you fight a boss and then you take 20 steps and you fight another boss, or a game where you fight a boss and then you play for 6 hours until you fight the next boss. If you're decent at Dark Souls and you can play through the game without too much of a problem, you're probably fighting a boss like once an hour or even less than that. And like I said, on the whole, I really, really like the bosses. I think all of them have great designs. Some are better than others. There are some bosses overall that just suck, but I think any game you're probably going to get that. And in Dark Souls, it's not too much. The suckage isn't really isn't too bad. So I want to talk about. Well, let's talk about some of the crappy bosses. And I'd like to make special mention of the names of these bosses because I think they're named. I think they have great names. I've always been fascinated with names of lots of things, but again, especially bosses. And I find it interesting to see what bosses are named because that says a lot about what the game is like, and even it can tie into the lore of the game. It can tell you what the developers, what they think of the players, I guess, because this is tough without my notes, without any notes. I'm trying to just talk here, and I can talk, but I want it to be focused. There's a difference between me just talking and me talking and being focused. But I'm trying to think of a game that has like really lame names for bosses. I know they're out there, but the bosses in this game, for the most part, are well named, and some are like they're shrouded in mystery, and they aren't obvious, or they sound cool. Now some, like in the DLC, the Sanctuary Guardian, it does actually still sound kind of cool, but it's not that exciting. It's just he guards the sanctuary. And then there's lots of bosses that are just demons. Asylum Demon, Capra Demon, Centipede Demon, the Demon Fire Sage, the Taurus Demon, the Stray Demon. That's a lot of demons. And those are usually the weakest bosses. They're just, in terms of looks, they're kind of lame. They're not that special. They're not horrible, but and especially the Asylum Demon, because you essentially fight him 3 times. There's Asylum Demon, the Stray Demon, which I talked about, who's exactly the same, and then the Demon Fire Sage, who is the same as those two, but he's like on fire, so it's the fire version. I feel like they got a little lazy with those. And what I just talked about last week about using bosses as enemies, that bothers me too. So stuff like the Capra Demon and the Taurus Demon and the Bell Gargoyles being used as those bosses being used as enemies, it kind of waters down the experience of them being bosses in the first place. Because a boss is a very unique special enemy that you see one of in a game, and that's it. So if you fight a boss and then they just throw him around later as just a regular old enemy, well, it's not that exciting. But that's not a huge deal because it's not like every single boss. But so let's see. There's alright. I said I want to talk about the bosses I don't like. A subset of that, let's talk about the 2 like quote unquote puzzle bosses. Because Demon Souls had a kind of a puzzle boss, the Dragon God, where you can't really hit him. You have to sneak through columns and avoid his attacks to get to these giant harpoon guns that like pin his wings back or something, and then his head falls onto this area that you can attack him because he's so giant you can't just hit him normally. This game has, I think, 2 of those: the Ceaseless Discharge and the Bed of Chaos. Bed of Chaos is the only boss, I think, in the entire series who doesn't reset if you die. Any other boss, if you get him down to half health and you die, you start at the last bonfire, you rest at that, and you get back to the boss and he has full health and all that garbage. The Bed of Chaos is different because he is like a special boss. I guess I should have said this at the top. Spoiler alert, I suppose, if anyone's never played this game and they want to be spoiled by the bosses, stop listening now. Actually, no, don't stop listening. Just put your fingers in your ears and go la 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 for the next minute. Bed of Chaos is like this little bug that's inside this huge weird tree, and the tree can attack you. But you have to shoot these 2 glowing orbs on either side of the arena where the tree is. They're like weak points to the tree. So you shoot one, and then you shoot the other, and then this middle area opens up that you can go inside of him and then actually fight the bug itself. But it doesn't. If you shoot one orb and then die, you don't have to shoot that orb again. It's gone forever. So you shoot that one orb and die, you can come back and you only have to kill one. And if you kill both of them, you only have to get through the little middle part. It's hard to explain, but it's unlike any other boss in the whole series. So it's kind of like a puzzle boss in that aspect. And it's very, very annoying. I find it to be maybe the most irritating boss battle in the whole game, because he has these giant tree hands that he can use to sweep you off into holes, because he creates holes in the ground and he can sweep you into them and you're instantly dead. And it's very, very annoying. Very annoying.
Why are you repeating that? Are you trying to say something?
Getting distracted by
beautiful things.
By beautiful things. Where was I? It's very
annoying.
It's very, very annoying because while it does save your progress on the boss, where you don't have to do everything over again, it can take, at least for me, because I'm not very good at the game, like 20 or 30 tries to fully kill this boss. And the bonfire isn't super far away, but it's far enough away that it's just a huge, tedious hassle to have to run back to him every time. And I've seen YouTube videos of people that go in and beat the whole boss in like 15 seconds. And I can just never do that. I can never get the speed down on any of these things. So that one is super annoying. And the Ceaseless Discharge isn't quite as puzzly as a boss but and I remember reading on the Giant Bomb forums, which I've mentioned before, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this boss because there's an easy way to kill him that people thought was like exploiting him or like cheesing him, but I do believe it's the actual legitimate way you're supposed to kill him. First of all, he's a huge, gigantic monster. You're up on a cliff, and he starts way below the cliff, and he's like a huge hulking monster that goes past. He's taller than the cliff you're on, so he's very, very, very like he's tall as a building, and he has huge tentacles and these big arms. So you can't just hit him regularly. You can either bait him into attacking you with a tentacle that he like slams on the ground that you can hide from, and then you can attack that. You can kill him that way. It takes a little bit of time, but it's pretty safe and it's pretty easy. Or you can have him follow you along the ledge of the cliff that you're on, and just he'll follow you if you run back towards like the fog gate, and eventually he'll get to an area that's like a lava waterfall, and he'll walk off and fall down and just die instantly. And people thought that was like a cheap exploitive way to kill him, but when he falls, he grabs onto the ledge and he holds on for a few seconds, and you can attack his hands to make him fall faster. So they deliberately programmed him to do that into the game. So based on that, I believe that's the way the developers intended you to beat him, is to get him to follow you until he falls into the giant hole. So not fully a puzzle, but you don't just beat him by wailing on him. And I don't like either one of those bosses particularly. Beta Chaos, I think, is the worst boss battle in the game. It's just so stupid. Ceaseless Discharge, I think, looks awesome. It's not a great battle. It has some cool lore to it as well. And then there's some that are just very underwhelming. Some battles, like the Centipede Demon, is really a stupid battle. The Demon Fire Sage, I think, is pretty lame. Pinwheel is probably the dumbest boss in the game because he's just this small little enemy. He can clone himself, but you can really just wail on him pretty easy. I was amazed the very first time I played the game at how fast I killed him. Because when you get into a boss area of a boss you're unsure of, especially the very first time playing the game, at least I'm usually kind of nervous, thinking like, oh boy, I'm gonna get killed real quick. But no, he's super easy. And then like I said, most of the demons, Taurus Demon, Asylum, Stray Demon, Capra Demon, they're whatever. They're not amazing, but they're not horrible. Again, there's that middling area. Dark Sun Gwendolyn is a optional boss who doesn't look amazing. He has a pretty good lore behind him. It's a pretty good story, but the boss battle is pretty dumb, and he doesn't look that great. You just chase him down a long hallway, and he keeps disappearing and shooting random things at you. So it's not that much fun. And the Iron Golem, I always thought was like a really weird battle because you fight him at the top of Sen's Fortress right before you go to Anne Orlando, after you ring the 2 bells and open up the giant gate. And he's just a big, huge knight, like a big giant knight. Not as big as the Tower Knight from Demon Souls, but he's pretty big. And he has like a tiny little head. But it's a very, very easy boss battle. In fact, speaking of the Tower Knight, it's a similar battle to that, because you can attack his feet and knock him over, and if you knock him over, you can basically kill him right there. So I always thought that was like a weird battle in the game, because it's so easy, and it's, I don't know, just kind of dumb, I guess. But I mean, that's just a small percentage of all the battles. And then you get ones like the ones that I like. There's a few that I want to talk about at the end that are like the esteemed battles. Like Quelaag, I think is a great battle. It's got a great little intro movie. The Gaping Dragon, I think I mentioned last week, or maybe I just wrote it in my YouTube intro, my YouTube description for that video. I love the Gaping Dragon. Amazing design. Has my favorite intro movie probably in the whole game, where he climbs up from like the waterfall area, and at first it looks like just like this little alligator head, and then he comes up and he's this huge giant dragon, and he gives a big roar. Very, very, very cool. I like that a lot. the bell gargoyles, that's a great battle. They don't look that amazing. They're just gargoyles, pretty typical, but they look great. And the music is awesome. And the fact that a second one joins in about halfway through, really surprised me when I first played it. So that's a fun battle. Crossbreed Priscilla is another pretty good one. I like that one. It's not, again, she doesn't look amazing. She's pretty interesting because she's like a human dragon hybrid, but she basically just looks like a very tall human with a tail, and she can disappear. So she's pretty interesting. So I like her. I like the what else do I like? Seath looks really cool. I like the look of Seath. I like his story as well. He's not terribly hard. Cutting his tail off, I will say, is maybe the most difficult thing in the whole game to do. I remember being very frustrated by that aspect. But that's a good boss. I like him. And again, Neato looks very neato, if I can say. Just a mass of skeletons that's connected, wearing a cloak of black poisonous miasma, I suppose. I don't know what the heck it is. I feel like now I'm just like running down bosses, like just listing them as I look at the wiki, that's not great podcasting. But I'm going over the bosses I like, and just briefly. I'm going to talk about a few in more depth in a minute. I kind of want to mention everything. That actually might be just about everything besides the last few I want to talk about. I'll talk about Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, too. He is the final boss of the main game, and he is very difficult. I find him to be probably, for me personally, the hardest boss to fight. I cannot beat him without completely cheesing him. I never beat him like legitimately. He's too fast, he's too aggressive, he has too much health, and he's too powerful for me to kill him, which is super lame, I know. But when you go into his arena, and the run up to him is so tedious. You start far away, and then you have to either run past or fight like 5 Black Knights, I think. And they always drop, I think, chunks that you can use to upgrade. So it's great to farm like blue chunks and white chunks maybe. But it's so tedious if you have to do it more than like twice. If you're like me and you suck at it and you have to fight them like maybe 5, 10 or more times in a row, it's not a fun run up. But when I get into the boss arena, I just run to the left. There's like a big rock, and then you can essentially grab a shield and a spear, and just keep your shield up and just move around the rock and attack him through the rock, because you have a spear. It's long enough that it will go through the rock and hit him. And I know it's super lame, but you can either block or dodge his attacks, because he can't really get to you, because he can't go through the rock. He has to go around it, but if he goes around, you can just go around that, and it's a big chase game. I know it's super lame. Maybe in my playthrough I'm doing now, I'll try to beat him more legitimately, but it's the only way I can beat him, and it's the only time I ever use a spear. I never touch spears except for that one battle, so it sucks, but that's how I have to do it. And I think it's not a good boss to end the game because he's so hard. And not just that he's hard, because there's some other hard bosses in the game and other hard bosses in the series, but it doesn't really make you take what you've learned throughout the game and use it. You just kind of, basically it comes down to if you're good at parrying or not. And I can't parry to save my goddamn life. So I know he's like the easiest boss if you can parry, but I just can't do it, and I don't have the patience to learn it. Even though if I probably did, I'd be able to beat him super easy every time without a problem. So I've seen people that can do that battle in like 30 seconds where they parry him like 3 times and he's dead. I just can't do it. So it's a battle that punishes you if you haven't learned a specific mechanic, which really sucks, because if you don't want to play any specific way, you shouldn't get punished for that. So I can add him as a boss that I don't think is that great, even though he looks pretty cool and he has a good story behind him. But there's a few bosses that you've probably noticed I have not mentioned at all, and they're pretty big ones. I'd like to start. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. So I'll go over them. I'm already at 36 minutes. Shit. I'd like to wrap this up in the next probably 10, which gives me like 2 minutes per boss. Okay. Great Grey Wolf Sif, I think, is an amazing boss for a number of reasons. It's a great design and a great idea. It just looks cool. Just a huge giant wolf that wields a sword, basically. That's cool. It is a very melancholy battle because it...
Sorry.
I might delete that ridiculous giant burp if it made it in. It is a very sad and melancholy battle because it's more of you invading Sif's territory and Sif just guarding what he's been sworn to guard. So it's almost like he's reluctantly fighting you, and you're certainly reluctantly fighting him or her. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl. And the fact that once he gets down to like a quarter of his health, he starts limping. Oh, that's no good. How could you possibly fight and kill an animal, especially such a realistic animal? It's just a wolf. After it starts limping around the battle arena because you've heard it so much. And I remember reading so much stuff online that, like, on forums, like, oh, do this and you can save Sif and you can spare him so you don't have to kill him and all that. You can't. You have to kill him. And of course, his tie-in with the Artorias DLC makes it even more amazing. I'm not going to go over that now because if you guys know it, you know it's amazing, and if you don't know it, then look it up. Oh my god, I'm getting hot with this laptop just sitting on my lap. So, Sif is definitely one of my favorite battles. I'm going to go into the DLC a little bit and actually talk about 3 of those battles. The Knight Artorias is a great battle, even though I've yet to beat it on my own. I'm going to in this playthrough. But he's fast, he is really great with his sword, and you have to be lightning quick with your reflexes to be able to kill him. It's just a very fun battle. It's like a nice sword fight. And there's not a lot of those in the series. Dark Souls, well, I kind of group Artorias in with False King Allant from Demon Souls, and maybe like the Pursuer from Dark Souls 2, and the Fume Knight and the Sir Alon from Dark Souls 2 actually are battles like that. And even from the Bloodborne DLC, the Lady Maria battle is like that too. But I like those battles because you really have to. You need to be very good with your reflexes. You need to be able to dodge well. You need to be able to understand the attack patterns. It's like lightning quick reflexes, and not just reflexes, but like just understanding the battle. You need to make decisions very, very, very quickly.
What?
Oh, sorry, I accidentally hit you. I wasn't.
Oh.
I was like
you just want me in here again.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I want to do something with you like weekly. So that's a cool battle. The Black Dragon Calamite, which is where I get my Instagram name. I like that specifically because it was a boss I did beat on my own for the DLC. He's an optional boss in the DLC. He's got a great backstory. It's a fun battle, although it's a very hard battle. It's the way that you can get Hawkeye Go to shoot him down from the skies is cool. Overall, it's just a great atmosphere. It's very fun. Again, fun but difficult, which is fine. And I liked it so much, and I thought it was so cool. That's why I decided to pick that name. I thought it was a cool name, fun battle, you know. And the final boss of that DLC is Manus, who's another one I've yet to beat myself. Very, very difficult. He's very big. He's like he's a very big monster. He was a person that was corrupted by the darkness, by the abyss. So he's a big giant monster. He moves very, very, very fast, and he has these big, huge arms. He can slam down on you. Not much fun to fight. but I think he's pretty notable because he's very hard. He looks awesome. I think he's great design, and he ties he that battle has reverberations throughout Dark Souls 2 because Dark Souls 2 there are certain bosses that are pieces of Manus that have come off, I guess. So he ties into other lore, which is great. And so the DLC in general just has great bosses. Sanctuary Guardian I mentioned a little while ago. He's not like I said, name wise, it's not the best, but he's a cool boss and he's very fun to fight. A great intro to the DLC. A great way to start it. You immediately get pulled back in time. You start the DLC, and within a minute, you're fighting a boss. So I think that's just perfect. Great way to do it. And there's 2 bosses left from the main game that I haven't talked about, and I'm going to talk about them right now. I'm not going to devote too much time to them. Maybe I can do another podcast that talks more about these bosses in length. The 4 Kings. I think everything about this battle is awesome. I think the name is great. It's simple, but it, like, for me, just calls such an image in my head. Like, these 4 kings. These are powerful people, and you're gonna fight them. And the fact that they're like these ghostly people, and they have these huge swords, and they use this magic, and they look cool. They look like they're tormented beings that are just not very happy. So in general, it's just a great battle. I love the name. I love where you fight them. How you have to fight them in the abyss. You fight them in total darkness. I think that's really cool. A very unique little area. Even though I don't think they're super hard. I know a lot of people would put them in with the hardest bosses of the game, and I don't know. I would easily say there's 4 or 5 bosses, including DLC, that are harder than them. I mean, they can be hard because you could end up fighting 2, 3 of them at a time. But if you just get close to them and just tank them, and just slam them, at least if you're melee. I don't know how it works with spells. I'm very rarely a spell user. They're not that hard. Just let them hit you because none of their attacks, besides their magic attacks, are that powerful. The magic attacks will take like 50. The magic attacks will take like 50% of your health at least, if not more. And they have a grab attack as well, which really hurts. But if you just let them hit you with their swords, it barely makes a scratch. So you can sit there, get hit by them. You can slam them. Each king has its own health. It's one collective health bar, but each one can be killed individually. So you can kill one, and depending on how fast you do it, you can be waiting for the next one to appear. Because I believe they appear on timers. So if you're too slow, you'll get one to appear before the first one is dead. But they usually appear so far away, you can still kill the first one without the other one interrupting. I don't know. It's a cool mechanic, and I like the battle. I think it's very cool. Whew, okay. 45 minutes. And there's one set of bosses that I have not spoken one single word about. And that is quite obviously Dragon Slayer Ornstein and Executioner Smo. The most famous bosses of the game, by far. If anyone knows anything about Dark Souls, they know that that's the boss, and that's like the boss is. If you look at lists of hardest bosses in video game history or things like that, they usually come up on it, and they're pretty damn hard. I don't know if I'd say they're the hardest bosses in video game history. I mean, I think Gwyn is harder. If we're going strictly by the bosses I beat solo compared to what I've needed to use summons, I would say Manus, Knight Artorias, and Gwyn are all harder than the Ornstein and Smo. But there's just something about Ornstein and Smo, and maybe they'll have their own episode someday, because this is only going to be 2 or 3 minutes on them. I'm going to stop this pretty soon. This is already just rambly beyond belief. but they're just there's something very, very grand about them. They have a nice intro movie, and they have that great music, and you know you're doing something really big when you fight them. It's so much fun. Even though the battle itself isn't that much fun, and it's very, very hard. They're great characters. They have awesome stories. You know that they're like, Smo especially is a maniac, and it's not something to ever be forgotten. It's very memorable. Boss battles in general, I think, are designed to mostly be memorable. Like, you don't want to forget a boss battle, and Dark Souls has some forgettable ones. But something like Ornstein and Smo, or the Four Kings, or Calamite, or Manus, or Gwyn, or Sif, especially Sif, they're unforgettable. You're gonna play Dark Souls and play through it, and you're gonna think about those bosses. And if someone talks about bosses, they're gonna be the first ones that you think of. Oh, Dark Souls. Oh yeah, well, Sif and Ornstein and Smo and Gwyn. You're not gonna think, oh, Dark Souls. Yeah, the Asylum Demon and Pinwheel. Duh. So I have a lot more to say about bosses in general and about specific bosses, but I think we need to stop it here because this is my second longest episode, and I feel like I didn't say much at all. And I know there's a lot of long pauses that I'm going to delete, and a few other things I'm going to delete and edit down. So I'll probably end up cutting out a good 90 seconds or 2 minutes out of this, maybe even a little bit more. But this is a pretty long one, so I think we should stop it here. I had fun with this one. This is a pretty good one. I know I mentioned that I wanted to start making my podcast more fun.
Woohoo!
More fun.
Woohoo!
But that's a lot of stuff that's a lot of blank space. I want it to be looser. I just get too focused. Alright, I think we've had enough of this episode. This is a good one. Well, I think it's pretty good. Why don't you guys be the judge? Vote. Go online and vote now. I'm not going to tell you where to vote. You can find it. Vote for this episode as your favorite episode of any podcast ever. And I'm going to stop this before there are more noises in the background. So stay tuned for other stuff. Dark Souls 3 is coming out soon. There's going to be a lot of Dark Souls 3 stuff. Next week might be the last non-Dark Souls 3 episode for a while. So it won't be about the original Dark Souls. I'll figure something else out, and we'll do something else next week. We'll do Demon Souls. I haven't done too much of that yet. But I think we're all done here. So until next week, thanks everyone for listening and watching. And I will see you all later. Anything to add? Any more burps? Kissy face. Bye.